Ahead of the Pope's scheduled visit to Canada next month, Indigenous children's rights advocate Dr. Cindy Blackstock is calling for the verification and disclosure of all Vatican records relating to Indian residential schools. Dr. Blackstock made these comments as a part of a special half-hour program airing on OMNI television this coming weekend as we recognize National Indigenous History Month. Lessons from the Graves is a look back at some of the key historical figures and is a challenge to Canadians to take an active part in reconciling this national tragedy. Here are some of the highlights and a warning: some viewers may find this content traumatizing.
We're at the graveside of Nicholas Fudd Davin.
These graves at Beechwood National Cemetery in Ottawa offer an important teaching moment, according to Dr. Cindy Blackstock. One of those lessons from the gravesite of Dr. Peter Henderson Bryce.
He was the Chief Medical Health Inspector for the Indian Department. In 1907, he blew the whistle on the preventable causes of death of children in residential schools, dying at a rate of over 50% over 3 years. The cause: unequal health care funding and terrible health practices. He went to Prime Minister Laurier and Duncan Campbell Scott to say, fix the system, save the children's lives. They refused.
Dr. Blackstock delivers a poignant plea for governments, churches, and Canadians to do better when it comes to reconciling Indian residential school history.
There are newspaper articles, for example, in the 70s and 80s about children running away from the schools and freezing to death. And people coming upon them and being alarmed and horrified that these children were dying, because it was quite evident that they were also, they were full of bruises and all the rest of it. There would be an outcry in the community, but then the headline would die and the children would too.
I'm Nick McCarthy. I'm the Director of Marketing, Communications and Community Outreach for Beechwood Cemetery.
McCarthy suggests that going beyond the headlines is where reconciliation can take hold. Another lesson at the gravesite of Duncan Campbell Scott, the chief architect and bureaucrat in charge of residential schools.
The one thing about Duncan Campbell Scott is that by the time he passed away, there's no one left to write his dates. So there's no record on his monument of his passing, his birth. It's only his children. And we often sort of like to remind people that his daughter died overseas at a school, a boarding school overseas, a very reputable one, but she died of very much the same illnesses that Indigenous children were dying of.
On the upcoming papal visit, Dr. Blackstock says the Pope should have come much sooner and with more urgency given the role of the Catholic Church.
Wouldn't you move heaven and earth to get over here and do whatever you could to make it right and to own that and to offer that apology? Why is it that people had to go over to the Atlantic and do that? That to me is a serious question.